Welcome back to ARC Maine. We're approaching tourist season in Maine, and one great way to explore and learn about Maine's largest city is through a walking tour.
That's exactly right, especially if you're looking for an activity to do with friends or family visiting as well. Joining us this morning is Dugan Murphy, the owner of Portland by the Foot. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me
I love
on.
your hat. It says Portland by the Foot on it.
Yeah, it's great.
That's my wife's logo. She's the designer.
Oh, awesome.
Great. All right, so our first question, what sparked the idea behind Portland by the Foot in the Hidden Histories walking tour?
Sure. So the idea really is that there's so much history to talk about in a historic old city like Portland, but there are a lot of stories that tend to get overlooked. There are marginalized populations or groups of people who just typically don't get celebrated with plaques and statues. Things aren't named after them, and yet they had critical roles to play in Portland's history, and that's really what I like to delve into.
Was this something that you always wanted to do? You know, like as a child, you were like, I want to, do walking tours, and I guess when did you realize that this is what you wanted to do, for your living?
Yeah, well, I feel like I've always had something of a proclivity for performing, but it wasn't until maybe I was in my late 30s or so that I really discovered that sharing history with people out on the streets is something I really wanted to do. And then my wife convinced me that we should take a risk and create our own company. And that's what we ended up doing.
Awesome.
Amazing. And speaking of history, Portland is full of it, especially in the old port. How much research goes into these walking tours and information?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So funny thing, a lot of the tours a lot of the subjects that I bring up on my tour are well researched. I'll read a whole book or multiple books on a topic, filter it down to about 90 minutes of a story. Other things are under researched, and I actually have to go to the archives and dig in and find the really first level evidence of something happening so I can share it with people. And that can take a long time because I'll have to make an appointment and show up at an archive and look at the old documents and then dig something up and tell a story.
Do you have a favorite story or one that you find that people are especially shocked to hear?
Sure. Actually, we're looking at a picture right now of the eastern end of the waterfront where the cruise ships come in today.
Yep.
Here we're looking at a picture of when Portland used to have a Chinatown 100 years ago. Margaret Jane Mussey Sweat right there. She is considered a founder of the Portland Museum of Art. That guy's Robert Benjamin Lewis. He wrote the first Afrocentric history of the world.
Wow.
Published right here in Portland, Maine.
That's
You're blowing our minds. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I can just rattle off about any one of these topics.
That is so cool.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. Chinatown, in fact, not only produced a lot of members of our community of Chinese descent living kind of in the center of the city, but all around the whole city of Portland. 100 years ago, there were 30 Chinese-owned laundries. Basically, everybody who didn't do their own laundry handed their laundry to a Chinese family. Yeah, that was only a century ago, really.
Interesting.
And one of those laundry owners was chosen to represent the country as American Mother of the Year in 1952.
Wow.
Her name was Toi Lan Goon.
Is it tough to keep all these numbers and dates and facts?
It's probably like the back of your hand
This is just how my brain works.
I know, it is how my brain works.
Awesome.
You could tell me some facts about car mechanics or trees, and it's just going to go in one ear, out the other.
Right.
But if you talk to me about history, I have enough other kind of, I like to think of it as scaffolding for an understanding of history. I have a place to put it in my brain, and it tends to stick.
That's
and
awesome.
I love history, so this is great. I'm enjoying all of this.
Yeah,
Awesome.
truly.
So, why are you so passionate about the Old Port and doing these tours in general?
Really, it's that hidden histories aspect I was talking about. There are two different tours I offer. One of them is called the Hidden Histories Tour, specifically to address that idea of what are we not talking about typically when you're going to school in Maine, when you read history books about Maine or take other tours in Maine. And then the other tour I do is the Black History Tour because Black presence in Maine predates English colonization, in fact. Hundreds of years of Black history, and we often think of Maine as simply a white state, and that's the whole story, is what we typically say. That's definitely not the whole story.
Wow.
A small minority population with a really, really deep history in Maine.
How far is the tour? How long is the tour? What's sort of the experience like?
Yeah, the tours that I do just involve 1.5 miles of walking. So that's like a 30-minute walk, but I do it over 2 hours. So it's pretty well spread out. And I offer them April through November. So during the more or less warmer months, just getting started for the year.
Awesome.
So where do the tours begin and where do they end with the route?
If you're booking the Hidden Histories Tour, you meet me in Post Office Park. We end in Bell Buoy Park, so that's kind of a circuitous route that goes around the old port and downtown, ends right on the waterfront. The Black History Tour starts at the First Parish Church our oldest congregation in Portland, Maine, and that will end in Eastern Cemetery, the oldest cemetery in the city.
I imagine you probably get a lot of tourists doing this, but why would you encourage locals, to take the tour as well? There's probably so much they don't know about.
Yeah, thanks for asking, because I mean, obviously it's mostly people who are visiting Portland that want to learn this history, but I get a lot of locals taking these tours as well. Sometimes it might be friends or family are visiting. Good excuse to go out and visit some museums or take some tours. But a lot of people take my tour just because they're curious. What did I not learn in school? A lot of the things that I'm talking about on tours never came up in school. And yet when you learn them, you realize that they really should be better taught to our students so that we better understand where we're from and what Maine has been like over time.
I know that I already learned a few great things from you, so I can't even imagine what your tour fully consists of. What should folks bring, rain or shine?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Shoes, water, things
it's
like
a rain
that.
or shine kind of experience. There are a couple of those days, as you know. Sometimes we get to 90 degrees, and so people will bring umbrellas just to stay out of the sun, right? That's pretty rare. If it is pretty warm, I recommend people bring water, but certainly just like a decent pair of shoes and like weather appropriate clothing. That's all you really need to think about.
Do you feel like just as far as like, a way of learning, it can really reinforce, you're saying these facts, these numbers, all these things, but actually being there physically, along the way, depending on how, what type of learner you are, it can help to reinforce, these facts that you're providing.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, one reason why a lot of schools will hire me to do their tours. I did a tour recently for Waldorf students in the Mid-Coast. Other schools have hired me to do tours for their students. I'm doing a tour this coming week, actually, for teachers in the Portland area. Because when you get out into the city and learn these stories, it's a little bit less of an intellectual, brainy process, and it's more of a you can feel it kind of situation, especially when we have the old landmarks still standing, which many times we do, and we can stand in the spot and say, this is where this happened. This potentially internationally significant event in Little Portland, Maine.
Amazing. What's a good website that people can find you at and book the tours?
Yeah, so I have a website, portlandbythefoot.com.
Awesome.
So that's just this.com.
Dugan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Excited to go on a tour sometime.
Makes me want to go.